Okay, if anybody wants to have your picture taken with John, we're going to be over here in the corner. Good morning, everybody. My name is John Nine. I'm a senior programmer here at the festival, and I would like to welcome you to our Cinema Café program. Encourage you to take a look at the rest of the program throughout the festival. We have some fun stuff tomorrow here in this space. We'll have the film writer, director, acting teams from Greener Grass and Before We Know It. Jane Campion and Tessa Thompson here on Friday. So take a look in some great programs in the afternoon as well. I encourage you to come out and listen to all the great conversation we have here. I'm going to ask our guests to come up in just a second. We're not going to belabor introductions. Obviously, you're very familiar with John Lithgow's work. What brings him here to Sundance are two films, Late Night, which played in our premiere section. And also The Tomorrow Man, which premieres this evening in our premiere section. And I'm grateful to my good colleague, senior programmer Mike Plant, who is going to lead us through the conversation. Please welcome both of our guests.
Thanks. Hello. Welcome. Thanks so much for coming out, and thank you so much for doing this. This isn't your first time back since in Utah, but I think when I was looking over your career, I did forget and remember that you've been here to Utah to be the evil minister in Footloose, filmed just down the street.
I don't think of him as evil. Thought he was a very good man with good intentions.
When you do get roles, this is kind of an interesting question for, but an easy one. Like, when you get roles, do you like being a good guy or a bad guy? Do you care much? Do you like doing everything?
Not really. I don't think in those terms. I like to read a script and read a script the way and imagine myself seeing a movie. Is this something I would want to see? And does the character grab me? Does he or she have an arc that takes the character from one place to another? And you just know great writing when you see it. You know good writing when you see it. You know bad writing when you see it. And sometimes you do it anyway because they're paying you a lot of money. It's there's so many different reasons to do something. You just balance one against the other. And what I hope to do all the time, intend to do, is just to do something as different as possible from what people expect me to do, or what I just did, or what I'm best known for. And that, to me, that's the whole fun of it.
Have you ever played a character you think that is a lot like you in real life?
I think Roberta Muldoon was very much like me, as a matter of fact. My sister always said Roberta Muldoon in The World According to Garp is the one character that was most like me, which I chose to take as a real compliment. The first film I did that was presented at Sundance, Love is Strange. That was an old gay man. I'm an old man, not a gay man, but I did feel that was very much like me, and I loved that film. We talk about a wonderful piece of writing.
Yeah, you've been to Sundance a few times, and of course people will know you from, everybody has a different favorite. You have a wide mix from Hollywood to the smaller stuff. But we were talking before, and you were mentioning that you like how you're sort of getting into more indie productions lately. Do you having been in so many different budgets, having such a good career in TV and in theater as well, does the word independent still ring true to you? What does that mean when somebody tells you they're going to make an independent film?
To me it feels like there's two different industries now. The studio industry and the indie industry, and very often the most daring, original, the films that you really capture your imagination, they tend to be independent films. It's nice to keep both things cooking in both areas. It's kind of like being in the theater world in New York, the musical theater and the legit theater. They're just two They're two very different communities, for one thing. But it's just nice to bop around. That's what I prefer to do.
And you, since you mentioned theater, it does appear that you grew up in the theater. Your dad ran the McCarter in Princeton, among other things. And did you think you were going to go into theater? What was that like? It almost sounds like you were an army brat, except with theater.
Kind of, yeah. When I tell people how many places I lived before I graduated high school, they always assume I was an army brat. But no, I was a theater rat. My dad produced regional theater, classical repertory. He started and ran 4 different Shakespeare festivals in Ohio. The Great Lakes Theater Festival in Cleveland is still going on. There we are, Cleveland. And that was our childhood. I went to 8 different public schools, and 4 of them were in Ohio. And I had been in about 20 Shakespeare plays before I was 20 years old. All of in little parts, sometimes literally little parts. I was Mustard Seed in Midsummer Night's Dream, and various spear carriers and soldiers. Right. And then graduated to little character roles: Nym, Poins, Pinch, Froth. They all had 1 syllable. And I graduated to Benvolio and Guildenstern and Hortensio, but I never played Macbeth or Hamlet.
As a child?
All before I was 18 years old. Wow. But I'd never intended to be an actor. I loved the theater world. Me and my siblings, like our best friends, were young actors. They tended to be young actors. They were a great troupe of people, young people coming out of Carnegie Tech, which is what Carnegie Mellon was called back in those days. But terrific actors. But I wanted to be an artist. From a very young age, I focused, when people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would always say an artist, starting at age 7 or 8. Wow. And I was quite serious about it until I went to college, went to Harvard, stupidly, really. I mean, you don't go to Harvard if you want to be an artist. But I fell in with the extracurricular theater gang immediately, because you go where you can fit in. And I was virtually a professional actor. I was so much better than everybody. And I heard all that. I heard applause and laughter, and it was like, yeah, I guess I better do this, you know. I don't do anything better. And finished college, went to England, and studied in earnest at Lambda. Oh, wow. And so came back a kind of weird hybrid between an American actor and an English actor. And it got me set up for an acting career. And after about 2 years of unemployment, 1 year working for my dad, 2 years of unemployment, bam, I finally got my big break.
Wow. Do you feel like from the outside looking in, we often think like, oh, theater is serious, that's where you learn to act, and then people that do film maybe aren't as trained, which of course is up to the person. But do you feel like you learned some things from doing the theater that have really helped you in your film career?
Well, sure. I think what I kind of think I'm more special on stage than I am in movies. And what I bring to movies is what I have learned on stage. I'm a fairly theatrical actor on film, and most directors tell me to do less. I almost make a deal with them right up front. I said, I'm going to give you way more than you want, right up front on the first take. Your job is just to take me down. On the other hand, you end up with some great big stuff that you might want in the cutting room. Yeah. It's kind of a little arrangement we have. I'll give you excess, and you can take it all away. Whereas on stage, it's just pure excess. Which is why you've seen me in some pretty large-size performances. And I think that's because of my theater training. The other thing is, there are so many different versions of great film acting. This remarkable young woman in Roma, who's never acted before. I mean, there's no better performance than that. And whereas you see Emma Thompson in Late Night, and you see incredible theatrical skill, that it's completely real and authentic. But she knows exactly what she's doing. Acting with her was just an enormous pleasure for both of us, because we came right out of the same training ground.
Right. And another myth that a lot of us have from the outside looking in is once you get to a certain level of fame, which is huge for you, and well, that's a joke, because we were joking before.
I agree. It is a joke.
Yeah. But you get to a certain level of TV and film career, you may not come back down to do independent stuff. You may not come back even to theater. And you have been definitely the opposite of that, especially in the recent days. So the films we're showing, like Late Night and Tomorrow Man, was it as simple as they contacted you like anybody would with the script? What made you interested in these films?
The first I heard of Late Night was from the costume designer for Pitch Perfect 3. I was in Pitch Perfect 3 as Rebel Wilson's dad. And his name escapes me. Anyone know the name of that fantastic man? Whatever his name is, he's tremendous. And he's a very good friend of Mindy Kaling's. And we were doing some reshoots, and he said, "Has Mindy talked to you yet about this part in her movie?" I said, "No." Actually, he ushered her in to introduce, because we were on the Universal lot. He ushered her in to just say hi, and after she left, he said, "Has she told you about the movie yet?" I said, "What movie?" So I can say authentically that she did write that part with me in mind. Right. Because I didn't hear about it again for another 6 months. Oh, wow. And it just shot at exactly the right moment when I could do it, and I liked the script a lot. I loved the notion of working with Emma. And I was fascinated by the vulnerability of an older man stricken with Parkinson's disease. I thought that was very moving in the script. So that was my response to it. But it came to me by that circuitous route, as they sometimes do. Most things come through my agents, who are very close to the ground. They know where they have fantastic taste. My agent, Brian Swartstrom, and my manager, Tony Lipp, I love giving them a shout out, because they are men of such tremendous taste, and they know what's going on. So that's how I first heard about Love is Strange and Beatrice at Dinner. And and they are they are eager for me to do all variety of things, which is why they're wonderful representatives. They have the same interests I do, which is be different every time out.
And Tomorrow Man seems like it was fun to make, because it concentrates on you and Blythe Danner, but also just like you got to sort of have this range where it's still funny, but you're bringing up a lot of current political ideas and stuff. So it seems like it was fun to make that.
Yeah, the script showed up again from Tony and Brian, and I was intrigued by it. It was a very gripping read. None of you have seen it yet, right? Has anybody seen Tomorrow Man? You're the only one in this room who has, you and me.
Yeah, I work here. Tonight they see it.
Yeah. Raise your hands if you're seeing it tonight. That's a pretty good number. I will be coy talking about it, but reading it was very surprising. It's an extremely original piece of work, which starts out feeling very conventional, and then it turns extremely unexpected. That's why I have to be coy about it. But I read it. The only unease I had about it was that the filmmaker, Noble Jones, had also written the script. He was going to direct it, he wrote it, and he was going to be the cinematographer. And it was his first film. Now, this is ordinarily 3 red flags. And I'd been in a few things, writers trying their hand at directing for the first time, and they'd been nightmares just for everybody involved, because it's an incredibly difficult process. And approaching it as a writer, in a sense, is even harder, because a writer knows exactly what he wants to see, but he has no idea how to get it. And I met with Noble, and he was a really impressive guy who'd spent a lot of time with David Fincher, just waiting and waiting. He'd done a lot of music videos and commercials. So it was a leap of faith. Also, Blythe Danner, who was also a client of Tony Lipps. He loved the idea of pairing us together. Blythe and I loved the idea. We knew each other from New York theater in the 1970s, but we had never worked together before. And she's a completely delightful person. So all those things made it sound like a very attractive, fun thing to do. And about 2.5 years later, we actually shot it. I mean, these things take time. And it was mainly delayed by the fact that other jobs came along that I took instead, much to Noble's dismay. But finally, the time was right, and we did it. And even that was 1.5 years ago. Wow. So this is a long, long process. Wow.
And before the 3 films of yours that were played at Sundance, did you visit Sundance before?
You know, I was in Footloose in 1984, which shot in Provo, Utah. And that's when Sundance was at Provo, up at the resort. And there wasn't a festival. There was summer script writing workshops, and I guess direct filmmaker workshops. In any case, it was a hive of activity, of independent film activity. And they would fly in actors to workshop scripts as if they were plays. It was like the O'Neill Center in New London, Connecticut, for theater. And we would go up there. They also had a wonderful restaurant. We would go up, Diane Wiest and I, and a few of the others, Kevin Bacon, we would go up to Sundance to just hang out. I had a couple of really good actor friends who were there for about a 2-week residency, just by chance. So there we were, 3 New York actors hanging out and that was, the film festival was merely a glint in Robert Redford's eye back in those days.
Do you like the vibe up here, though? Just obviously film.
The vibe of Sundance?
Well, festivals in general, that sort of.
Well, this is by far the most fun. I haven't done a huge. Oh yeah, this is. I mean, are you all festival mavens? Do you all go to lots and lots of festivals, or just Sundance? I mean, those of you who go to many, don't you agree this is the most fun? For one thing, I mean, just look out the window. But I've been to Berlin and Venice and Cannes, and they're just and Los Angeles and New York. I don't know. It's so simpatico. It's so companionable. Palm Springs is a very nice film festival that has much the same vibe. And also the fact that it's keyed on independent films. I think that's the key. Well, I'm saying all sorts of self-evident stuff. I don't know what I'm talking about, really. But
you give us so much praise. That's very nice. Thank you. Before, often when we find out we're moderating these things, everybody will sort of vote on what film they want you really bad, like you got to talk to him about this. And it was all kind of even, but I think a lot of people really remember Buckaroo Banzai. I don't even know them, yeah. What did you think that was going to be before you made the film?
That was so insane. I mean, I just talked to you about the experience of reading a script and wondering, would I like to see that? I had no idea what this was. It was completely insane. And I had just done my first big movies in L.A. It was back in the early 80s when there was this incredible string of Garp, Twilight Zone, Terms of Endearment, Footloose. Wow. I'd done them in close order, and then along comes Buckaroo Banzai. And I turned it down. I said, I can't make head or tail of this. It did have this completely wild, insane character, but that wasn't exactly a plus, just his craziness. But then I met with W.D. Richter, and who's just a wonderful guy, and he just wouldn't let me say no. He said, "Look, what's the worst that could happen? Nobody ever sees this film, but it'll really, really be interesting. It won't be I don't know." He was so engaging and appealing, and he also explained what the hell this thing was about. I mean, he and I can't remember the film writer's name, but they were roommates at Dartmouth, and they had cooked up this crazy world of Buckaroo Banzai and the Hong Kong Cavaliers, and he sort of built the world for me. It was like having Star Wars explained to you, except Star Wars on speed, and they were just delightful. I thought, all right, yeah. And bit by bit, I put together this insane character. The fact that he survived on sugar and electricity. I thought, well, he should have a fright wig. I mean, it should be like that. His hair was electrified like 5 times a day, and his body had been inhabited by an alien back in the 1930s, so it had aged. Yeah, I don't know. His metabolism had been fucked up. I said, well, he should have terrible teeth, so we created these incredible, horrible teeth, and I don't know. It was just. I will say, shooting that film, I have never laughed so hard and so long on anything except Third Rock from the Sun. So.
Have you had a project that turned out even better than you expected, whether film, TV, or theater, where you felt like, oh, I'm going to do this, and it really means something to me, and then the acclaim was powerful?
Oh, yes. While I was doing Footloose, I got a call. I was just in a 2-week rehearsal period for Footloose, and after 1 week, I got a call from my agent saying they want you to replace a role in another film in the Midwest, and so we're going to try to get you out of Footloose for just a week. You're only rehearsing, you're not shooting. So, and I read this script, and it was just, wow, this is fabulous. I would rather do this than Footloose. But Herb Ross would not let me out to do it, so I could not play this wonderful little part in this fantastic script. But fortunately, they were both produced by Paramount. And Paramount leaned on Herb Ross, and he grudgingly sprung me loose, so I shot my entire role in 5 days in Nebraska. And it was crazy. I thought, this film is going to be a disaster. It was so out of control. Nobody's listening to the director. The stars won't even speak to each other. I'll do this job, but I can't wait to get out of here and just forget this ever happened. This movie was Terms of Endearment. And you absolutely never know. And that's the opposite, unfortunately, is more often the case. That you think you have something great and nobody ever even sees it.
Right. And do you still get that excitement from theater then, of doing this sort of jump?
Well, the same thing happens in theater. You work that hard on anything, you figure it's got to be good. We've fixed all the problems before the audience sees it. So we must be, it's a business of self-delusion that we're in. Illusion and self-delusion. So I've been in just as many flops as hits.
Yeah. What's the longest run you've had in a theater, do you know?
In the theater, I was in 2 shows that ran, one was a year in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, the musical. About 10 years ago, which was a wonderful time. And the other was back in the 1970s, a West End farce called My Fat Friend with Lynn Redgrave. Both long, long hauls, but...
Does it change over doing that same thing over and over again? How does it affect you?
Well, I don't know. I'm pretty good at sustaining my interest. There's a wonderful story that I always tell, which may be apocryphal, but it answers the question, how do you sustain a long run? The story of a great international maestro conductor who is brought into like the Pittsburgh Symphony as a guest conductor to conduct Brahms' Second Symphony. And with the recital that evening, he rehearses with the orchestra in the morning, and he can't get any interest from them. They've played it over and over again in so many concerts, and he stops them and he says, "I know, ladies and gentlemen, you've played Brahms' Second Symphony 1,000 times, and you have no special interest in playing it again. But tonight, you're going to be playing it for a crowd, a full crowd in a concert hall. I want you to play it for just two people. The one who's hearing Brahms' Second Symphony for the first time, and the one who's hearing it for the last time." And that's my philosophy. You know, it's not my gratification, it's theirs. It's a gift. And your challenge as an actor is just to bring something to life for them. And I don't know, it is true in theater, it's far more repetitious than film. Film, in fact, is quicksilver, because you're just catching it once. And the more alive it is, the better. The more often you do it, the more stale it becomes. But in theater, you've got to create that impression over and over again, like polishing a jewel. And I love the process in both cases.
Did you ever think about writing or directing in film or theater?
Well, I did direct a good deal in theater when I was starting out. When I was very young, I directed for my dad. And of course, I came back from 2 years in England full of all sorts of pretentious wisdom about how to do Shakespeare and Restoration comedy. And I directed for my dad, and I was a good director. In fact, I directed a very successful production for the Baltimore Center Stage, and they hired me. You're not going to like this story. They asked me to be associate artistic director, and I was like 27 years old. Wow. And I just could not get going as an actor in New York, so I accepted the job. And 2 weeks later, got the offer of my dreams, which was a member of the resident company at Long Wharf Theater, and 5 roles in a season. And the second of those productions was a play called The Changing Room, an American premiere, which was a big national success, moved to Broadway, and 2 weeks after my Broadway debut, I won a Tony Award for it. And that was the big break I just mentioned. So that was pretty much the fork in the road, where I chose to be more of an actor than a director, and bit by bit I dropped all ambitions of being a director or a filmmaker, mainly because acting it remains a wonderful challenge. I mean, parts come along and they're absolutely irresistible, and it happens 3 or 4 times a year. The rhythm of a film director's life is completely different. You have to forswear everything else for 2 years to work on one thing. And every director I've ever looked at halfway through a shooting period looks like he's about to die of fatigue. It's like, nah, acting is easier than this. I had a wonderful experience working with Jay Duplass on Beatrice at Dinner. And it was only about the second or third acting job he'd ever had, except for little bits and pieces in his brother's movies. Right. The first, of course, was playing one of the son in Transparent. But this was his second, and he had discovered how much fun and how easy acting was. He said, "Just why?" And he said to his brother, "Why didn't you tell me?" Because Mark was always the actor, right, and Jay was the writer and filmmaker. Well, they both did both, yeah. And he's a wonderful natural actor, Jay. So he was both very delighted at the discovery and very pleased with himself.
Yeah. And are actors often asking you advice on set and stuff?
Or is it? Not really. I think I try to disarm everybody I'm working with and get right on the same wavelength with them. Just because it's a very hasty process, acting in movies. You have to strike up a sometimes a very intimate relationship when you barely know the person. I remember working in Dexter, the TV series. The very first thing I did in Dexter was the very first scene of that 13-episode arc. Those of you Dexter fans out there will remember it. When I got naked into a bathtub with like a beautiful 22-year-old woman and strangled her and slashed her femoral artery. And this is the beginning of a story of a hideous serial killer. I walked onto the set, met this charming young woman, and I thought, well, here we go. And the sooner I could create an ease with her, the better.
Yeah.
And that happens on all sorts of levels.
Yeah.
With all sorts of actors. So.
What did your dad think of your film career?
Well, he was bemused. I remember when I first did Third Rock from the Sun, my mom and dad were tickled, but they kept on. They were so confused because they could never figure out when the show stopped and the commercials started. These were theater people. What can I tell you? But no, he was an incredibly sweet man. He was just delighted with everything I did. Or if he wasn't, he wouldn't say anything. He would just smile. But no, he saw me do my first Broadway shows. He saw me have my first successes. I won an Emmy Award for a little thing on Amazing Stories, and I had the chance to dedicate it to him while he was watching it on TV at home.
Oh, nice.
So,
Are you ever interested in theater adaptations to movies? It's obviously so difficult.
I mean, taking a piece of theater and putting it...
Yeah, like something written for the theater that's turned into a movie. Are you a general fan of those? Or
I'm trying to think if I've ever done that. Can you think of anything?
Or have you even seen one that you're like, oh, this actually does something new with the form?
Well, sure. I think On Golden Pond was probably a better movie than a play. I think as a general rule, I don't know whether this is true or not, but think about it. Better movies are made from mediocre novels than great classics. And possibly better movies are made from mediocre plays than great plays. If you could just discard, you have to discard everything when you start a movie project. You have to reinvent it in a new form. Yeah. And if you're treating a Pulitzer Prize winning piece of material, you tend to treat it with too much respect. Yeah. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I think it's true.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before we take some questions from the crowd, just the last bit of interesting bio info that came up on the internet is Coretta Scott King was your babysitter.
Yes, she babysat for me and my sibs. She was it's Coretta Scott, and she was a student at Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, and we went to
It's like,
Yellow
is all of
Springs.
America in this room?
This is a very cool audience, I have to say. But I was in the Antioch School, which was the lab school, the education department lab school of Antioch, and Coretta was like a teacher's assistant, and they hired us. My folks hired her to babysit for us. I don't really remember her. My older sibs do. But I met her. She was the good friend of someone who produced that show, My Fat Friend, in the 70s, and I met her at the opening night party. Wow. And she said, she's the one who told me, I babysat for you. And I thought, well, that's a surprise. But she was just delightful.
That's so nice. We have time for a few questions from the audience. Yeah, whoa, fans. Okay, right in the front there. Well, microphone's coming to you. Go ahead and talk to the microphone so everyone can hear your question.
When Stephen Colbert came out with the Colbert Report, I thought that his character on the Colbert Report was a little similar to your Dick Solomon on Third Rock. Did you ever think that?
Well, I take that as an enormous compliment. In a way, in a sense, it never occurred to me, but playing Dick Solomon, it was a wonderful time. 6 years of just pure fun. But in a sense, the similarity there is I always felt Dick Solomon was pure id, pure unedited id. And so was Colbert. So it's, yeah, total narcissism, imperious and clueless. I think that was written in some description. I thought that was perfect. And he was just completely insufferable and appalling in so many ways. The way he would treat Jane Curtin as Mary Albright, just blame her for things that he'd done, and he just. It's a wonderful secret to comedy. Think of John Cleese in Fawlty Towers. Just pure id, just pure white-hot, flaming, driving id is just hilariously funny. And Stephen knows all about that, for sure.
Right there in the middle, sir. Yeah.
Sorry. I loved your character in Trial and Error. And I was sort of wondering what was your inspiration, because he was at times absent-minded, at times witty, sharp, and you were completely on your seat, on your seat, wondering, is this guy really a killer? Just wondering what inspiration for that, because it was brilliantly done.
Oh, thanks for asking about that. Raise your hands if you saw Trial and Error. See, that's not many people. And for that reason, it's no longer on the air, which is a real pity, because it was a piece of genius. I urge you all to find it on Hulu or wherever you look for it. I think it's even hard to find, but it was a satire of the current mode in real-life, real crime documentary series like Serial, Making a Murderer. And it was hilariously funny because it just completely deconstructed the form. And what I just said about Dick Solomon, it's very much the same playbook for that incredible character of Larry Henderson. Thank you so much for the compliment. I was very proud of it. It was so incredibly dopey. Yeah, right. Yeah, I was the defendant who may or may not have murdered his wife. And I had to make it so that you could plausibly believe that he was either guilty or innocent, and that basically he didn't really care. It was wonderful. Jeff Astroff and Matt Miller created this piece of comedy genius that will really make you laugh.
Right there are the glasses, sir.
Take you back to the early days when you played Roberta Muldoon on Garp. Mm-hmm. When you saw the script, had you read the book?
Yes.
Yeah, so had I before I saw the movie. And I never envisioned Roberta Muldoon looking anything like you. When you first read the script, how did you think you're going to play this character?
Well, I thought it would be easy, and I thought it would be wonderful. I had read the book a couple of years before. I'd loved the character of Roberta Muldoon. I never thought they would make a movie of that. I thought it was impossible. There was one absolutely key scene which I thought couldn't be put into a movie. If you know the book and the movie well, you probably know which scene I'm talking about. I was dying to play the role. I thought, I loved the character in the book. I remember my agent calling me, or my agent's assistant, and saying that George Roy Hill was directing a movie, A World According to Garp. I thought, woohoo. And he said, he wants you to read for a part. And I thought, what? I thought, what part? Garp? No. What? He said, and I said, what part? And this assistant said, well, I don't know. There's a typo. It's a character called Roberta. And I thought, oh my God, I am perfect for that. And it had never occurred to me. And I went, it's very funny, I went in to meet with George Roy Hill at the behest of Marion Doherty, the great casting director. Basically, if she says, cast this person, that's the person who gets cast. But George said no. He thought I was way too tall, and Robin Williams was cast, and it would be too absurd. And they spent about 8 months trying to find the right Roberta. They saw real trans actors, they saw transvestites, they saw real athletes. They actually cast Kevin Kline, from what I heard, and then did a makeup test and gave up because he looked so much like a buccaneer. So they finally came back and screen tested me with Victor Garber, Jeff Daniels, Richard Jordan, the late Richard Jordan, and me. And that screen test, curiously, I had read a book by Jan Morris, Conundrum by Jan Morris. Just out of curiosity, I'd seen her interviewed on television, and I read the book. And one of the things in the screen test with George, he simply asked me questions and asked me to improvise in character and in full drag and makeup. And I simply spoke about he would ask my history, how did you choose to do this? Tell me about the process. How did you adapt? And I simply talked right out of what I'd read from Conundrum. And he and Marion were just amazed at how much preparation I had done for this moment. But that was his Roberta, and that's how I got cast. There was a moment where he actually wanted to see if I was a persuasive football player. So even though I had on a skirt and a blouse and everything, he told me to take a hike take the hike from an imaginary center with a football, fade back, and deliver a pass to a crew guy in the corner of the studio. So in my full drag, I took the hike, zapped him a pass, and he caught it, and I went, oh! And it was like the producers, that's my Roberta! So
That is great. Gentleman in the gray sweater, then we'll come back here.
Hi, Mr. Lithgow. Big fan of your work.
Thank you.
2 questions, actually, that I have for you. My first question is, you have worked in so many mediums and you're a theatrical actor. How have you been able to find the truth and the layers of the characters as you jump from medium to medium? And my second question is, I'm actually getting ready to play Duke Orsino in 12th Night at the Yale Repertory Theater, and I wanted to know if you had any advice for how to handle that particular production.
Wonderful. Well, you're going to have a wonderful time playing Orsino. I played Malvolio with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and that's one hell of a play. How do I don't know. To me, jumping around from medium to medium, it's all basically, the basics are the same. You're just inhabiting characters and assembling characteristics and rehearsing and being very well prepared. It's exciting to go from one medium to another, including from drama to comedy, to entertaining little children, which I also love to do. It's all pretty much the same. It's storytelling, and you just try to tap into the impulse to tell stories and people's need to hear them. That's a fairly pretentious way of answering your question, but I do think it's a pretty basic process. It's communicating with people. And you sort of know when you're sounding a false note. And bottom line, the short answer to that question is, the only difficult acting is bad writing. Because bad writing, you've got to make something work. It just doesn't work on the page. And sometimes it doesn't succeed, and you're mortified at yourself when you finally see the product. But you just keep on pursuing the truth. You know you're an actor. I hope we work together sometime. I will say, I say that to young actors all the time, and I've worked with about 8 or 9 actors who've said, you know what, outside the stage door on Broadway in the mid-'80s. You said we would work together sometime, and here we are. It's happened that many times.
That's nice, yeah. Have you ever been in the middle of a play and said a line from another play? Because you know so much.
No, I haven't done that, but I have gone up sky high, and that's a terrifying experience. It doesn't get any easier.
Wait, what do you mean? You're high on drugs,
when you say you go up,
yeah.
that means you've forgotten your lines.
Gotcha.
And when you forget your lines, you don't know where you are. You're in such a panic. It feels like the worst thing that could possibly happen to you, including nuclear catastrophe. And I'm not sure why it's all that important, you know. But at that moment, you'd rather die.
Right here, go ahead.
You've done so many different ranges. You've done so many different ranges of roles and parts. And is there anything that you think about, like, I really wish I could do a part like this in this? And if there is, what would it be?
You know, that's a question that I've been asked often, and I used to have an answer, which was, I must play King Lear. Because that's the Everest of roles for character actor. And then I finally played King Lear. So now I have no answer. I would say all the really great experiences I've had have been things that I never dreamed I would be cast for. Winston Churchill. You know, like, who would cast me as Winston Churchill? But Stephen Daldry saw something there, and very often other people have more creative ideas for you than you have for yourself, because they just, you know, they encourage you to take chances that you wouldn't take by yourself. Roger Ailes is a part that I've just played in a movie that we'll be talking about next year, possibly at Sundance. Mm-hmm. That's another one. Of course, he's now a fat old man. That seems to be my stock in trade.
Do you think you played King Lear, you were older when you played King Lear, like in your own age?
It was about 4 years ago in the summer.
Do you think you played him differently being an older man yourself than you would have as a younger actor?
Well, I would have tried to play him the same. With a role like Lear, there's a sort of window of opportunity. You have to play him when you're old enough to play him, but also when you're young enough to play him, because it's so strenuous, at least on stage. And I played him, I guess, at age 69 or so. I would probably like to play the part again. But it was just pure physical energy you have to do it.
Yeah. There's someone super excited to ask a question, so I hope this goes well. Wait for the microphone.
Oh my goodness. Hi. So I've been a huge fan forever, and the first time I really encountered anything that you made was your music when I was a kid. What was your decision to go into children's entertainment, and what was that like? Is it really different?
Thank you for asking. I get all choked up. I mean, you know, I have a baby sister 10 years younger than me, and there are 4 of us siblings. I'm the third oldest, and she's the baby, the afterthought. And I was kind of her third parent growing up. I entertained her all the time. We have a wonderful sibling friendship even now. And then I had my own kids. I taught myself the guitar at age 27 when my first son was born. And over the years, I played and made up songs for their classrooms and assemblies and benefits for their schools. And when I did Third Rock from the Sun, you know, you become a television celebrity, and someone will let you do anything you ask. This can be a very dangerous thing, but can also be a wonderful thing. And I just started asking if I could make a home video for kids of my kids' concert, and then an album, Singing in the Bathtub, my kids' album. Once Singing in the Bathtub was made with all this wonderful orchestration, I looked up in the yellow pages, Carnegie Hall, and I called them up and I said, I'd love to do a concert for kids with a full orchestra. And 6 months later, I had my Carnegie Hall debut. And after that, I did kids' concerts with about a dozen of our great symphony orchestras and did another 2 albums, put together a fantastic little jazz combo to do kind of anarchic Spike Jones kind of novelty songs. Entertaining kids is fantastic and a wonderful counterpoint to entertaining adults. I always say, the holy grail for an actor is actually achieving a suspension of disbelief. You never get there. Adults, they never forget they're in a theater. They always know they're watching a fiction. They're watching actors pretend to be real human beings. But on a great night, you get them very, very close to thinking that they're seeing the real thing. That's what happens when people are so shocked by something that they go like that. Or when they explode with laughter when they didn't expect it. That's getting quite close to a suspension of disbelief. With kids, you get a total suspension of disbelief. Anything you do, they buy. They think it's the real thing. And it's just so thrilling. To give you an example, I walk out on stage with a hat on and I sing a song. The song ends and I greet the kids, tell them we're going to have a concert, we're going to have fun. And the conductor tugs me on the sleeve and points to the hat, and I feel the hat and I say, oh, no, I'm so sorry. I do this all the time. I put my hat on, I sing the song, I forget to take off my hat. Please, if it happens again, make sure you tell me. And in the course of the concert, I wear a hat, different silly hats, rabbit ears and beanies and propeller. And every time I forget to take the hat off. And the kids scream, take off your hat! Like it's, and I say, what? Take it, what? I'm not so fat. Take it. Oh, why didn't you tell me? We did! And then you sing them a song. Or I'll play this game, Guess the Animal, where I start drawing like a hippo. And they have to guess what it is before I finish the drawing. And about halfway through, they start yelling, it's a hippo. And I say, it's what? It's a hippo. Funny, I thought you would get this one. And I keep drawing. It's a hippo! And I finally say, oh, yes, it's a hippo. Good for you. And I sing the hippo song. Wow. And it's a matter of keeping them stimulated, but also calming them down. Yeah. And keeping their attention at every single moment. This is a wonderful challenge because they are both the most exhilarating and the most difficult audience you can perform for. And, you just go from that to a bunch of grown-ups. What could be duller, Well,
you're basically turning all these people back into kids, so it's going pretty well. And back up to, so when you call someone out of the phone book, do you actually just, when you're trying to do you get this sort of response like, hi, this is John Lithgow, could I work with you? Do you do that and things happen?
No, I don't. I sort of wait, as I say, things keep coming my way. All these wonderful surprises come. I'm not very good at stirring up my own projects or producing myself. Or directing myself. I tried that years ago and was so confused. No, it's an interesting question. And I sometimes think, wow, I should be doing what they're doing. These actors who create projects and invent series. But whenever I've tried it, it's not something I'm good at.
Because we also always hear like, oh, he had this script for so long and then he got so-and-so attached. and then things moved fast.
Well, that's happened with a couple of things. I mean, that's happened with The Tomorrow Man. So in a sense, it happens in spite of myself. There are actually two independent scripts, both of which came to me right from the filmmaker because they saw me and nobody else in this role. One of them is a 92-year-old. Didn't know how to take that, and these wonderful men, Tony and Brian, they just nurse these things along.
Right. And assuming tonight, I'm sure tonight will go great with The Tomorrow Man. You think you'll still get a lot out of doing these independent films? Like, you don't seem to be someone that's affected by budget at all.
No, I'm just interested in good work. I keep on saying no to these great big studio films, much to the frustration of my agents. But often I relent and do them anyway. But the ones that if you ask me the films I'm most proud of, Love is Strange is right up there at the top. And that was a film made for $1.2 million. And Fred Molina and me, they put us up. We were never in a trailer. We were in somebody's bedroom in some wretched little apartment in Bushwick. Some friend of the producer who said, "Yeah, you can stay. You can use it as a green room for the day." It's a beautiful little film, and that's what you keep on. And every once in a while, films like Moonlight come out, and they become not only a beautiful little film, but a gigantic commercial success. And that's when you have your cake and eat it too.
And TV has changed so much since being on episodic show. Do you think you'll do that in the future? There's so many different options now for these projects.
Last Friday, I did a day of shooting on The Crown in London. I have a little reprise in that I'm not supposed to tell anyone, so. But I mean, The Crown was also up there among my favorite projects, and that was television. Yeah, television is so different now. I mean, there's all the best filmmakers, they want to do television too. Roma is both a magnificent feature and a special offering on Netflix. The whole business is changing so fast that I can't even get my head around it. I just presume they'll keep wanting me. And that they'll still want live theater. Audiences will still want to be in the same room with the actors they're watching. I have great faith in that.
Yeah. Do you have some theater planned coming?
Yeah, I start rehearsing on Sunday for a Broadway play.
Oh, wow.
So,
can you talk about that?
Yes, it's called Hillary and Clinton. It's written by Lucas Nath, who's one of our great new playwrights. He wrote Doll's House too. That Laurie Metcalf did on Broadway. Laurie is playing Hillary Clinton, and I'm playing Bill.
Wow.
And wonderful play. And it's being done on Broadway mid-March. It'll open mid-April, run till August. You all have to see it. You're all invited backstage.
You're going to work with all of them in the future?
Yes, right.
Well, this has been so lovely to spend some time with you, John. And thank you so much. I hope you keep coming back to Sundance.
Thank you. I will. Thanks so much. That's great.